Dawn just broke in the small town of Moncklin, where sparse streets remain wrapped in a light mist. Near the main road lies a wide park, lined with ancient oak trees. In the early morning, the place is peaceful, with only a few joggers and some chirping birds. No one could have guessed that this same park would soon witness a clash changing the lives of several young people. Logan Harris, a 15-year-old African-American high school student, moved with his family to Moncklin just over a year ago. He lives with his mother, Amanda Harris, and his 10-year-old brother, Ethan Harris. His father, James Harris, is a U.S. Navy SEAL lieutenant currently stationed far from home. On the surface, Moncklin appears tranquil, but serenity does not always mean safety. That day, because Ethan had a late afternoon basketball scrimmage, Logan arrived at the park early to wait for his little brother. Still wearing his Moncklin High School uniform, white t-shirt, khaki pants, and black sneakers, he intended to sit, read a book, and enjoy the fresh air after a long day. Life, however, has unexpected turns. As the afternoon sun shone calmly, a menacing biker gang rolled in, exuding a sense of imminent threat. Little did they know the slender African-American teenager quietly reading was actually the son of a battle-tested Navy SEAL, trained to remain calm and ready for danger. Nestled beside the Maple River, Moncklin is a small town where people mostly work in farming or small trade. The local high school is modest, so small that students of different grades often cross paths. For the Harris family, Moncklin represented a fresh start after James Harris was transferred to a nearby naval base. They chose this town for its affordable housing, perceived safety, and fresh environment, ideal for Logan and Ethan to grow up. Still, nowhere is entirely free from darkness. Some residents weren't welcoming toward newcomers, especially an African-American family. Logan, however, paid little mind to rumors in the school corridors or occasional skeptical glances. His mother Amanda often said, "Live by your values. Don't let others define who you are." And his father, Lieutenant James Harris, offered tougher guidance. "If you want respect, show you respect yourself. Be ready to stand up when necessary." As Moncklin moved into early summer, the weather turned warm, and the park in the town center became a popular gathering spot after school. Ethan loved basketball, playing often with the school team in the park. Logan, not fond of lively sports, always supported his younger brother, ready to wait for hours to escort him home safely. He would sit on a bench near the basketball court reading a thick adventure novel, wearing a slightly drooping backpack. At 15, Logan stood a bit taller than many peers, lean and composed, with a face that seemed more mature than his years. Few in Moncklin, apart from Logan's close friends, knew he'd been trained in martial arts and survival skills since childhood by his father. To most, Logan was simply a quiet kid who seldom spoke or joined group activities. Occasionally his classmates teased, "Why are you always so silent?" He would just smile and say nothing. He tried to avoid any attention or conflict. Beneath his calm exterior, Logan possessed a sharp mind. His father, James Harris, had faced countless dangerous missions and knew how unforgiving the world could be. Whenever home, James taught Logan invaluable lessons. How to read body language, regulate breathing, flow like water to avoid panic during surprise attacks. Though strict, James showed unconditional love to his son. Logan was not invincible, but he had learned how to stay rational under pressure. After moving to Moncklin, he felt an even greater need for vigilance, sensing a side of the town that wasn't always as peaceful as it appeared. That day, Ethan's basketball game ended at 5:30 p.m. Logan arrived early as usual, planning to read and unwind. The sky was clear, with soft sunlight pouring onto the manicured grass. Cheers from the court echoed across the park. Some parents stood around the perimeter, chatting and cheering at each shot scored. From his bench, Logan would occasionally glance at his younger brother hustling on the basketball court. He smiled with pride whenever Ethan dribbled smoothly or made a good pass. Everything seemed peaceful. Then the roar of motorcycle engines shattered the calm by the park entrance. 5 massive bikes zoomed in, forming a line across the wide opening. The roar of their exhausts drowned out the laughter and conversation in the park. People on the court or strolling nearby turned to look. Someone muttered, "Who are those guys?" Leading the pack was a tall, broad man wearing a black leather jacket, worn-out jeans, and a half-face helmet that showed a gaunt face. The back of his jacket bore a stylized skull patch and the words "Raging Jackals." 4 others trailed him, each emanating aggression, ready to intimidate. They killed the engines, scanning the park as if sizing up this new territory. Almost in unison, they locked eyes on Logan, the quiet African-American boy reading on a bench. Logan sensed the sudden scrutiny, an uneasy feeling. His training kicked in. These men didn't come here by coincidence. The gang leader, Dwayne Hawks, hair in a short buzz, arms covered in tattoos, was the first off his bike. He removed his gloves and squinted at Logan from a distance. For a moment, no one else moved. Then Hawks gave a subtle nod to his gang, and they started closing in on the bench where Logan sat. Logan raised his eyes, meeting Hawks's penetrating stare. A look of someone used to controlling others through fear. 3 of the 4 remaining bikers fanned out, forming a loose semicircle around the bench. From an outside perspective, Logan was just a slender teenager, a book still open in his hand, a backpack at his feet. He showed no sign of fleeing. Hawks approached, voice rumbling. "Hey kid, what are you doing here?" The park atmosphere seemed to momentarily hush, though it was still full of people. Most were preoccupied with the basketball game, unaware of the tension forming. Logan calmly closed his book, keeping his tone composed. "I'm waiting for my brother to finish his basketball game." Hawks looked mildly taken aback. Maybe he expected the teenager to stammer or cower. One of the bikers, a shorter man with broad shoulders, Mitch, snickered, eyeing Logan with mockery. "This park, it ain't for someone like you," he sneered, deliberately implying that someone like you had no place there. Logan tensed. He had faced prejudice before, but rarely so outright. His father taught him, "You can disregard insults, but if someone endangers your rights or your family, you stand your ground." He clenched the book, remembering the rule, keep a cool head because bullies thrive on provoking fear or anger. "This is a public park," Logan answered quietly. A brief silence fell. Hawks and his men exchanged glances, evidently annoyed that Logan wasn't trembling. The tension thickened. The lanky, shifty-eyed Shane inched around behind Logan without a word. Just as the standoff stretched taut, a child's voice rang out. "Logan, hey!" Ethan scampered over from the basketball court, sweat beading on his forehead, the navy jersey stained with grass. He pulled up short upon seeing the strangers crowded around his brother. His earlier smile vanished, replaced by confusion and unease. Shane flashed a nasty grin, rubbing his chin as he sized up Ethan. "That kid your little brother?" Ethan didn't understand what was happening, but instinctively took a step back. Logan's heart seized. Ethan's presence made the situation more dangerous. He drew a deep breath and stood up from the bench, warning Shane with a steely tone. "Don't touch him." Hawks let out a scoffing laugh, clearly irritated by Logan's defiance. A silent signal passed among the bikers. Logan sensed it. They were ready to act. Right on cue, Shane lunged forward, aiming a punch at Logan's shoulder. It was a test strike, gauging Logan's reactions and intimidation factor. But Logan was trained to read the attacker's shoulder and hip movement. He pivoted, parrying Shane's forearm with precision, then torqued the man's wrist at an angle that made Shane grunt in pain. The entire gang froze for a second, stunned. Hawks scowled, evidently not expecting a kid to neutralize a blow so swiftly. From the side, another biker, Trent, tall, neck covered in tattoos, threw a sweeping punch at Logan's midsection. Logan stepped back half a stride, caught the punch on his forearm. The force rattled him. Pain shot through his arm. He gritted his teeth and yanked Trent's wrist, refusing to let him pull away. As Trent stumbled, Logan drove his elbow into the man's ribs. Trent wheezed and dropped to one knee, face contorted. 2 quick takedowns shocked the rest of them, especially Hawks, who realized, this kid knows how to fight. Despite his bold front, Logan's heart pounded with adrenaline. He hated violence, especially in public and in front of his little brother. Yet he knew, if he retreated, they would crush him. He had to protect Ethan. A memory of his father teaching him surfaced. James Harris's keen eyes explaining each technique, urging calmness and measured breathing. James would disapprove of fighting frivolously, but he would want Logan to defend himself if forced. Ethan watched from a short distance, terrified but in awe. Tears welled in his eyes, though he admired how his brother held his own. He wanted to run for help, but Logan signaled him to stay behind. Hawks, witnessing 2 men floored, lost his smugness. Rage flickered in his eyes. He snarled, giving a sign to the other two, Mitch and a man with snake tattoos named Rod, to attack together. At that moment, onlookers began to realize something was amiss. A few parents yelled warnings. Children shrank back in fear. Calls of, "Someone call the police," echoed. Mitch and Rod launched themselves at Logan anyway. Logan inhaled, bracing himself. He guessed Mitch would attempt a typical street-style flying kick. Indeed, Mitch swung a side kick at Logan's torso. Logan tilted his upper body, raising his arm to block. The impact slammed into his forearm, causing sharp pain. He used the momentum to hook Mitch's ankle and yank it down. Mitch lost balance and crashed onto his back. Rod charged from behind, throwing a hard punch aimed at Logan's head. Logan didn't fully dodge in time. The blow grazed his ear, leaving him dizzy. Stars flashed across his vision. Struggling to refocus, he elbowed backward into Rod's flank. Rod yelped, doubling over. From a short distance, Hawks watched in frustration. How is a 15-year-old beating nearly all of us? Impossible. He decided to intervene, personally aiming a knockout strike. Logan staggered, feeling woozy from the near blow to the back of his head. Seeing Hawks rush in, Logan knew this man was stronger and more experienced than the others. One direct hit could floor him. Logan mustered all his training, lowering his center of gravity. As Hawks threw a punch, Logan twisted sideways, slapping down the man's forearm, absorbing part of the force. Even so, the impact reverberated painfully through Logan's forearm. He gritted his teeth and responded with a swift low kick to Hawks's knee. Hawks stumbled, cursing in pain. Before he could counter, Logan used a final pivot and drove a punch to his jaw from below. Hawks reeled backward, disoriented. Onlookers let out a collective gasp. It all happened in seconds. The 5 bikers were now nursing bruises. Shane grasped his wrenched wrist. Trent clutched his ribs. Mitch dazed from his fall. Rod doubling over from an elbow strike, and Hawks staggering with a bleeding lip. Their dominance was gone. The crowd was filming on phones, and sirens blared somewhere in the distance. Hawks knew continuing the fight would only worsen their humiliation. With the police sirens growing louder and witnesses everywhere, he realized they had to leave. He scowled at Logan, refusing to admit defeat. "Get on the bikes!" Trent and Shane hobbled to their bikes, clutching their sides. Mitch and Rod growled curses as they tried to keep their balance. Before leaving, Hawks shot Logan a dark look, his voice dripping with menace. "You'll regret messing with the raging jackals, kid. I'll remember your face." They revved their engines and sped away, leaving the park in unsettled silence. Bystanders approached Logan, gazing at him with a mix of fear, shock, and admiration. Ethan ran up, tears streaming. "Are you hurt?" Logan exhaled shakily, becoming aware of a throbbing arm and tears in his shirt. He forced a smile and patted Ethan's head. "I'm fine." Some adults hurried over. "Are you injured?" "We have footage in case the police need evidence." Logan nodded gratefully. Inwardly, he knew, this isn't over. He could almost feel Hawks's final glare burning in his mind. Logan squeezed Ethan's shoulder, silently vowing to protect him. By that evening, news of the fight had spread rapidly across Montclair's social media. Videos of Logan single-handedly confronting 5 bikers went viral. He was no longer the shy, unknown kid. He became the town's buzz. When the brothers got home, Amanda Harris was waiting by the door, her face pale with concern. She worked as an accountant at a local firm, collected but obviously shaken at the sight of Logan's bruised forearm and torn shirt. "What on earth happened?" Logan recounted the incident, with Ethan adding his viewpoint about the menacing bikers. Amanda listened in tense silence, her hands clenched. Finally, she locked eyes with Logan. "Do you realize how dangerous that was?" Logan nodded, looking down. Amanda softened, drawing both sons into a hug with a sigh. "You did the right thing protecting your brother. But I'm afraid they won't let this go. Tomorrow, I'm speaking with the police. I don't want you handling them alone." Logan dipped his head. "I know they won't back off. I'll be careful." Amanda eyed him, thinking of her absent husband, James Harris. If James were here, he'd know exactly what to do. That night, Logan tossed and turned. He relived the fists, the collisions, and especially Hawks's vicious gaze. In the darkness, fear nudged his heart. Fear for Ethan, for his mother. Fear that next time might be worse. but he also vowed not to let fear rule him. Across town, in an abandoned auto shop, 5 bikes stood in a row. Hawks leaned against a wall, chain-smoking, while his gang cursed and nursed injuries from being beaten by a kid. Mitch spat on the floor. "We gotta teach that punk a lesson. He nearly snapped my wrist." Shane rubbed his bruised arm. "He's no amateur. If we're careless again, we'll lose. Bigger this time." Hawks cast a cold glance around. "I want everything on that boy. Who he is, who his family is, his schedule. No one messes with the raging jackals." Another gang member with a thick beard hesitated. "But if the cops start poking around, we'll have trouble." Hawks sneered. "We still got big plans in Monklin, remember? I won't let some kid ruin that." He lit another cigarette, exhaling smoke into the stale garage air. "Track him. I'll handle the rest." In the shadows, the gang's predatory glances promised retribution. Logan might have won that day, but the real fight was just beginning. The next morning, Amanda escorted Ethan to school, while Logan went to the Monklin police station to meet Lieutenant William Boyd, a seasoned officer who knew the Harris family. Boyd had once met James Harris and respected the Navy SEAL. After Logan described the scuffle and showed him footage, Boyd shook his head. "Raging jackals. We've heard of them but never pinned anything on them. They rove from town to town causing trouble, maybe dealing drugs. Slippery bunch." He patted Logan on the shoulder, sympathetic. "Don't worry, we'll increase patrols. If they come after you again, we'll intervene." Logan thanked him but felt uneasy entrusting everything to the police. He knew the gang was elusive. Leaving the station, Logan headed to school and found his best friend, Chris Miller, a quick-witted, inquisitive classmate of Latin heritage. Logan confided in him, requesting help in digging up intel. Chris was the school detective, connected to a lot of people. Chris stared wide-eyed. "You took out 5 bikers? Dude, are you a superhero?" Logan forced a grin. "Trust me, I'm still hurting, but I need to know who they are and where they hang out. Can you help?" Chris grinned. "Piece of cake. I'll ask around. There are a few cliques in Monklin with loose ties to bigger gangs. I'll see if they've got leads on the jackals." Over the following days, Logan resumed studying but stayed vigilant. Ethan remained anxious, never wanting to be alone. Amanda acted calm on the surface, but Logan knew her worry ran deep. A week after the incident, Logan received a rare phone call from his father, James Harris, who was anchored far out at sea. Over the crackling line, Logan summarized what happened. James went silent for a moment, then asked, "Are you seriously hurt?" "Not badly, just bruises." "Is your mother okay? Your brother?" "Yes, but they're worried." Another pause. James's tone grew firm. "Son, I'm proud you stood up to protect Ethan, but you must also think about your own safety and your mom's. If they escalate, call the police. Don't take them alone." Logan heard the concern behind his father's words. He promised caution. James's voice softened. "I'll come home as soon as I can. Remember, discipline and calm. That's your real strength, not just your fists." Monklin seemed to settle back into its routine, but quiet can be deceptive. One afternoon, Ethan was dismissed early from school and was supposed to meet Logan at the park. Logan got tied up in a last-minute meeting with a teacher, so Ethan waited outside the school for a while. Unable to reach his brother, Ethan decided to walk home alone, only 4 blocks away. A gray, battered pickup truck had been shadowing him. Feeling uneasy, Ethan attempted to cross to the opposite sidewalk. Suddenly a man jumped out, grabbed his arm, and threw him into the truck before he could scream. The door slammed shut, and the vehicle sped off. An hour later, Logan dashed to the school for pickup, late due to the meeting. Ethan was nowhere in sight. After calling his mother and getting no clues, Logan's anxiety spiked. Someone mentioned a boy matching Ethan's description being forced into a gray truck. Logan's heart sank. He called the police to report Ethan missing. By evening, tension engulfed the Harris house like a dark cloud. Amanda was in shock, tears falling freely. Logan stood rigid, containing a mix of fury and dread. He suspected the raging jackals must be behind this. They were striking at him by targeting Ethan. Chris Miller appeared, face grim. "Word on the street says the jackals took your brother as leverage, some twisted payback. They want you to come out." Logan clenched his fists, recalling Hawks' threat. "They're going for my weakest point, Ethan." Lieutenant Boyd and his officers searched for hours, but found no sign of Ethan. Early the next morning, the Harris family received a call from a hidden number. A rough male voice said, "You want the kid alive?" "No cops, just you, alone. Come to the old scrapyard at the edge of town, 8 p.m. tonight." Then hung up. Amanda panicked, forbidding Logan from going, yet he knew he had to go. Ethan was in their hands. Boyd suggested planting a tracking device and bringing in the police for a sting. Logan hesitated. His father had warned him, "Don't be reckless." Yet Ethan's life was at stake. Chris chimed in, "You aren't on your own. Your mom's right. We set a trap with the cops hidden nearby. I'll help too. I've got friends who can film and gather proof. We'll plan carefully." Logan looked from Chris to his mother, finally nodding. "I won't fight alone, Mom." At 8 p.m., the defunct scrapyard lay in a remote area at Montglen's edge. Piles of metal towered over old, rusting vehicle bodies. A single streetlight cast weak, eerie light. Night wind whistled through the wrecks. Logan approached, backpack slung over his shoulder, scanning the darkness. Hawks stood waiting with Mitch, Shane, Rod, Trent, and a few more. 8 men total. Bound in front of them was Ethan, hands tied and mouth gagged, trembling in terror. He saw Logan and tried to cry out. Hawks smirked. "I told you I'd remember you. If you want your brother safe, you'll have to pay the price." Logan's stomach churned as he stepped forward, voice quivering slightly. "Release him and then we'll talk." Mitch laughed. "Talk? Kid, we want to settle the score. You humiliated us." Shane kicked a piece of metal at Logan's feet, the clang echoing ominously. He pressed a knife to Ethan's neck. "Pay your debt or you want the kid to bleed." Anger flared in Logan's chest. He forced himself not to rush in. Must buy time for the police to set up. Hawks sneered. "So you want to do this the nice way? Get on your knees, kiss my boots, beg for our mercy, and maybe I'll let your little bro go." Logan's cheeks burned with shame, but Ethan had a knife at his throat. "I can't risk him." Suddenly, a low voice broke the tense standoff. "No need for that. Let the boy go before things get worse, Hawks." Everyone spun around to see James Harris, the Navy SEAL lieutenant, standing like a phantom in the dim light. He had rushed back to Montglen upon hearing about Ethan, coordinating quietly with Lieutenant Boyd. Hawks blinked in shock at the muscular man radiating authority. "Who are you?" James stepped closer, voice unwavering. "Someone you shouldn't have messed with." Without warning, Rod lunged at James with a metal pipe. In a flash, James seized Rod's wrist and twisted, Rod howling in pain as he dropped the pipe. Another swift move and James's fist slammed into Rod's jaw, knocking him out. The gang paused, stunned. Hawks roared, "Get him!" The men charged. Logan seized the moment to dash toward Ethan, slicing his bonds. He softly reassured, "You're safe now. Dad is here." Ethan sobbed with relief, clinging to his brother. Meanwhile, James engaged the attacking bikers with swift, SEAL-trained strikes. Each who lunged at him went down, almost like a choreographed display. Hawks tried to stab at James but was instantly thrown into a stack of metal parts, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. Just then, police sirens wailed, flashing lights illuminating the scrapyard. Lieutenant Boyd and other officers surrounded the scene, guns drawn. Realizing the trap, Hawks and his men had no choice but to surrender. Ethan was freed with only minor scrapes, and Logan cradled him, overwhelmed with relief. James walked over, eyes warm as he surveyed his sons. No words were needed. Logan knew his father was proud and thankful they were both unharmed. The raging jackals were taken into custody. Police found weapons and drugs in their vehicles, ensuring the gang members faced serious charges. Montglen would soon reclaim its peace. A few days later, in the Harris family's front yard, Amanda watched her husband exercising with their boys in the early morning. She smiled, a bit shaken by everything, but thankful they had come through it together. The Harris family was reunited, strengthened by the ordeal. Logan's heroism spread quickly at Montglen High. Some classmates marveled at him. Many realized, don't judge a book by its cover. Logan, for his part, grasped that courage isn't about recklessness, but about taking the right stand at the right time, and that it's okay to rely on others. He saw plainly that, without the help of friends, the police, and his father's timely arrival, the outcome might have been very different. Ethan, after his harrowing experience, realized the world could be far more dangerous than he ever imagined. Yet he also found comfort in the unbreakable bond of family, a big brother who'd fight to protect him and parents who would move mountains for their children. The following week, Monklin's park filled again with children's laughter. Ethan returned to his basketball sessions. Logan still sat on a bench, now with his father at his side, both watching Ethan play. A gentle evening sunlight bathed the oak trees. James placed a hand on Logan's shoulder. "You did well, son. Just remember, this family faces things together. In a crisis, never bear the burden alone. The greatest strength is teamwork and love." Logan looked up, smiling. He had learned that real power isn't merely about skill in combat. It's about discipline, the resolve to protect those you love, and never being afraid to ask for help. The sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow on Monklin's quiet streets. The raging jackals were gone, and the town felt calmer. Sometimes Logan recalled the threat that still lurked in the world, but he knew there was no place for fear in his heart. With family and allies by his side, he understood he was never truly alone. Final message. In life, there will always be those who try to dominate or bully you for their own ends or prejudices. True courage is choosing to defend what's right. True wisdom is knowing when to seek help, and unwavering love is the mightiest motive to overcome all dangers. If you found this story inspiring, feel free to share your thoughts. What would you do if you found yourself in Logan's position? Where would you find the courage to face adversity? Share your reflections below. Thank you for reading, and see you in our next uplifting story.